This session, for those of you that are here, is getting responsible AI right for kids. So welcome to this afternoon session on Tuesday at ASU+GSV. My name is Rosamund Mitchell and I'm the moderator for this session. Thank you all for being here. I've got a fantastic panel and we're going to dive into some meaty questions. So as a product developer, I'm bullish on AI. As a parent, not so much. And today we're really going to be looking at talking about the intersection between AI technology and early childhood education, our littlest kids. It's obviously, as we've heard endlessly over the last many days, an incredibly exciting time for AI and for the potential to democratize expertise, access, knowledge, fun, but there's also many cautions. So we hope to keep a nice balance between techno-optimism and caution today. We want to share some of the nascent best practices that the folks up here on the stage have been working on, and none of this is worked out, as you've heard. This is not done, and we are all advocates and need to become knowledgeable about how we can contribute to the debate. So a couple of things just to set the research in place for what we know already, which is some cautions that we care about. Young children can make the mistake of sharing their personal information, either directly or indirectly with AI. It's risk number one. Kids also, as it has come out in the research, start to assume that an AI platform is a lot like a person. Good, bad, indifferent. What could that mean to kids as they're growing up? And third, often kids are more likely to trust a smart speaker or an AI chatbot than they are to trust, say, their parents or a teacher or another adult or human. Anyway, just setting some of the context for what we know already as this nascent field gets going. So Sara, let's start with you. At PBS, you are the standard bearers for making content that is relevant to kids today, but also making sure that that content is deeply researched around the affect as well as the academics. Most recently for something called Lila in the Loop, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you've got a STEM focus. Talk a little bit about what you've learned so far about what makes AI exciting for content and storytelling.
Great. So hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. So yes, at PBS Kids, in February, we launched a new show called Lila in the Loop. And the thought behind this show was thinking about computational thinking and what kinds of skills are kids going to need for the future with engaging with technology. And so we really were thinking about what are the building blocks of computer science, but also what is technological literacy for a 4 to 7-year-old, and what is AI literacy for them as well. So there are two things happening with the show that I want to share. First of all, we're thinking a lot about how we teach kids about all of these technologies and what's happening. So the writers are really in the writer's room thinking about what are real world scenarios that could be happening with kids right now. And I will back up and just tell you about the show. Lila is 7 years old. She lives with her family in an apartment above the diner that her parents run. It looks a lot like Philadelphia. And she has 2 older sisters who are twins and a younger brother. It's a great, fun family show. But what makes Lila really unique is that she has this sidekick named Stu. And we never explain who Stu is. It's been really hilarious to listen to kids try to describe Stu. A lot of them think he's a cat or not, or maybe a robot. But he's really a proxy for a computer. And so she has to use really logical statements when talking to him, and he can help her out with all kinds of things. So for those of you who've done coding, she can say, Stu, will you help me ice these cupcakes? And Stu can ice all the cupcakes, but if you don't close the loop and tell him to stop, he's going to ice everything in the diner. He's just going to keep going. So mayhem ensues, all the very kind of fun thing that happens in shows. But there's some questions that then can come up if you have a character like Stu. Her older sister is doing an art project, and Stu comes in while she's working on it and makes another art project with her as she's talking. She accidentally turns in the wrong one and wins the contest.
Accidentally. on purpose?
Yes. No, she looks very guilty when it happens. And so it gets into this question of, can she take credit for something that she inspired the computer essentially to do? And it leads to a conversation with her teacher about it. It leads to a conversation about how they give credit to it. And these are the kinds of things we really think kids need to be seeing in stories right now. They need to be hearing about this and thinking about the questions, and they also need to watch a character struggle with it. But the other piece with Lila in the Loop is it is part of one of our NSF-funded grants to focus...
National Science Foundation. Right.
Thank you. Rose is doing my subtitles over here. Thank you. My citations. So we have a National Science Foundation grant to do some experiments with conversational AI with this show. And so what the scriptwriters are doing is they deliver a full episode, and then they're looking at key points in the story that support the science learning, support some piece of it. And they are writing another version of the script where there's a point where Lila turns directly to the camera and asks the kids some questions about what they've just saw. And then the kids can have a conversation with Lila about whatever concept just happened. This is the second round of research. We also did this with a STEM show called Eleanor Wonders Why. And so what's happening is Eleanor in one of these would stop and ask the kids a question like, if the ketchup is too thick to get out of the bottle, how can we get it out? What can we do? And the AI is listening for the kids' responses. Words like add liquid, add water, make it thinner, or make it more goopy, trying to understand, like, did the kid understand the conversation about thickness and water? And then scriptwriters have written all of the possible responses. So right now what we're saying is the AI is parsing the child's language, but then we're using the actual creative human talent to then be the voice of the character in response. The early results from this testing is being done with UC Irvine and University of Michigan. The early testing is showing that there are statistically significant gains in the understanding of the scientific concepts for kids who engage in this conversational version of the episode. So it's really exciting work.
So they're not just consuming to learn about AI, they're also generating and interacting with. So
yeah,
that's really interesting. So Robbie, at Common Sense, you have all had such a fantastic history of putting together, you know, really clear directions for families, for parents around movies, books, you know, a fabulous rating system. It's a whole new thing with AI. So as kids get more savvy about AI literacy, what is happening in homes and what is Common Sense helping to make clearer as a best practice?
Thanks, Rose, and thanks all for having me. It's great to be here this afternoon, and I'm really psyched to have my 3-year-old check out that show you just described, so that was a great pitch. So when I started as Chief of Staff at Common Sense Media, we didn't have an AI initiative, and now we are doing a number of different things in this area. I think one thing that I'll just contextualize is the research. A lot of the educators that you've been bumping into at this conference are on the sort of cutting edge of implementation. We know that there's a lot of educators that are not actually planning on using Gen AI tools, and that there are lots of schools where the work that you're hearing about here isn't actually happening yet, and that's definitely a challenge that we want to navigate. From the parent perspective, I think part of what we're trying to do is, through our ratings, to provide context for the types of conversations that parents can be having with kids. We had a Good Morning America segment that came out last week in which we demoed stable diffusion and all of the ways in which stable diffusion will perpetuate bias around gender, around race, around profession, around lots of other factors. And I think one of the things that we really encourage parents to do is to sit with their kids, to use the tools, and really ask, well, why is the AI doing that? How is it working? So that parents can have that experience.
But none of us really know how it's working. So how are parents going to be able to do that?
Well, I think on that front, we do have a number of resources on our site. We have AI literacy lessons for teachers, for kids, and I think this connects more broadly to our work in the media literacy space to help folks understand what media is, what it means, where it came from, the associated messages. Those are habits of mind that are going to be really newly vital in the AI space, but certainly aren't new. And there's certainly ways that you can engage young learners in media literacy type conversations in an AI context.
And you're not seeing AI as a separate thing in a way. You're seeing it as the same kinds of rule sets that you would have with anything that's a new technology or a new media.
We're seeing it as an area where parents and educators are definitely looking for clarity right now.
Yes.
So our audiences are really, really asking for information, for tools, for resources. But in terms of the actual content, the ways of thinking, the ways of approaching this new technology, this isn't that different than some of the other waves that we've navigated over the 20 years that Common Sense has been around. If you look back at our history, smartphones weren't a thing when we were founded. Social media was not a thing. The one-to-one Chromebook revolution was not a thing. This is another wave of new things that needs to be navigated thoughtfully, and there's resources that we can provide to help with that.
You're the Zen master. You're right in the middle of optimism and caution. So Ken, welcome from Hong Kong. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So congratulations on the recent transaction, Kelly's Education, which is a language learning AI chatbot and robot. I think I've got that right. I think your services help kids learn English and Mandarin, right, in the home, not in schools. So tell us what's exciting about why would a family want to have this kind of experience, which is both, a screen and also a robot, and what are the cautions that families have as you've rolled this out?
Okay, thanks, Rose, and hello, everyone. I'm Ken from Hong Kong, and as mentioned by Rose, we provide the online education to the kid. Our focus is about the age at 3 to 10. And for this kind of group, you know that they can't focus for a long period of time. That's the reason why we try to shorten the learning duration for them. That's the reason why when we try to create a course, the online course to them, it should be funny and interactive. And otherwise, they will run away and distract by others. And then you have to ask someone to catch him back or something like that. It's always the case. And when we try to consider to provide such a course, of course, we have to work with some famous publisher because they have fruitful contents, just like Disney World of English, National Geographic, or Oxford. Yeah, and then we create a good curriculum to them, and also we find a learning buddy for them. We have the live teacher, the teachers from US.
And some of these teachers are from the US, right?
Yeah. From US, the majority is from US, and also provided that if the parents would like to choose the UK essence, then we'll provide it for them, and also some of them from China, because we teach Mandarin as well. And when we consider we would like them to have fun to learn, we introduce the AI robot. The reason behind is that when we try to let them enjoy the learning, we have to introduce a attractive learning buddy, another learning buddy for them.
So there's an adult learning buddy, and then there's a robot.
Yep.
Which is pretty cute. You can don't do it now, but it's called TalkBo.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Exactly. I'm sorry that I forgot to bring because my AI has not reminded me to do it. But I still bring myself here. Okay. And then for the robot, we just enable the robot to help the kid to practice the pronunciation. We try to leverage the AI cloud to measure the accuracy for the kid, and then try to fine-tune the accuracy for her or for him. And of course, what we have to pay attention to is that we have to do it. We have to follow strictly the ethical guideline. We don't record it. We respect the privacy and also the security for the kid. And of course, we don't want the parents to complain. It's because you record something or you track something for my kid, and we just use the live measurement by the robot, and then to let the kid enjoy the fun and also make make the kids more engagement with the learning buddy. I think that for the key objective of education, we just want the kid to learn effectively and efficiently. That's the reason. That is the key objective. So when we try to introduce the new technology, we so-called the new technology, or it's not new for long, okay. But we have to pay special attention to it. Yeah.
Right. So the recordings are deleted right away. Is that right?
In fact, no records.
No records are kept. Interesting. Well, that's a good segue. Thank you, Ken, to Tom. And Ello, Tom, that is the company that you founded, is using some of the recordings in real time of kids to help them learn to read and read to learn and practice reading on a regular basis at home, right? But sans robot, no actual physical robot, right? But more a conversational agent. So I think when we think about how young children, I remember when we first got an Alexa and my daughter would constantly talk to it, they get very familiar with the idea that they're having a conversation. And some of what we've heard is that we want that. We want them to practice the new language or the new learning. We want to get that assessment data so we can give them feedback. But how do we prevent some of the issues other than sort of immediately it vaporizing? How do you create some kind of ensurety that their personal identifiable information is okay and that it's safe? What are the kinds of things that you see that make it responsible at what you're doing with Ello?
Yeah. So I can talk about one specific thing we're doing, and then the thing that I don't have the answer to that I think is the most important thing for us all to solve as a society. We take privacy very, very seriously. Common Sense does a great job of holding companies accountable and helping them to develop great privacy policies. We do it through very explicitly communicating with parents as to what we're doing, giving them opt-out, making sure that they're in control and that it's all explicit, nothing's happening underhand. The other thing is the bias. I think when it comes to AI, kind of spoke about bias in the system, and that's one of the biggest risk areas is we build these models that we don't fully understand, or we can understand to some extent, but they have a certain life of their own, and if they are driving in a certain direction, that's going to become almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so how do we ensure that systems aren't biased? The way that we do that, so speech recognition is a crucial part of the Ello product. We have a program where we collect demographic data hand in hand with parents choosing to give us it to understand the performance of our model for different subgroups. And then we've built the model in a way that if we see a disparity in performance for different subgroups, whether it's gender or race or accent, we can then actually correct the inputs to the model that then will even out the bias coming out of the model. And so we could have taken an easier path to building the model, but we chose to take a path that would give us more flexibility in avoiding bias. So I think
it's really an anti-bias model if you're doing that, because you're actively changing the thresholds and the rule sets, right?
Exactly. And so it's all models have bias. Like all models deliver a thing, and they will always have some bias built in. And it's are you tracking that bias, and then are you doing something about it? Yeah. Are you changing it? And I think so. Companies can do things to try to be responsible citizens. And again, I'm going to call out Common Sense Media a bunch of times. Common Sense Media helps companies hold companies accountable. The bit that I don't know yet is around parents. I think the optimist part of me says we've actually learned some lessons, hopefully, maybe, from privacy and from social media. Like social media, the technology underpinning social media is nothing like as dramatic as the technology underpinning AI, but the social implications of social media were huge. And I think we didn't do a good job as society of navigating that. And so hopefully we've learned some lessons from having been through these past two technological shifts that we can apply to AI. At the same time, given the speed that AI is taking over everything, the speed, I was thinking this morning, so my 4-year-old, when he graduates college, it's going to be 2042, which is terrifying. This world is going to look nothing like it looks right now. And so how he is learning to interact with technology, and I've had an argument where it's been me and Google arguing with my son. I'm like, no, look, we'll ask Google. Like, trust me, a brontosaurus is different to a diplodocus. And so, but he's growing up in a different world, and the last thing we can do is bury our heads in the sand. And so I'm thinking, how can we partner? How as companies and organizations can we partner with parents to help them on this shift? Because I've got a 4-year-old and a 4-month-old. I'm exhausted. I don't want to think about technology right now. I just want to go to bed. But we have to if we're gonna successfully navigate this shift as a society. And I don't have the answer to that.
So what about this question, because it's relevant to all of your work? Does it matter if a 4-year-old, your 4-year-old or someone else's, thinks that the AI, whether the robot or a conversational agent, is real? Does it matter?
I can take a first stab. Yes, to some extent. I was speaking to a Stanford researcher at lunchtime who had done a research study on young adults who used Replica. It's like an AI chatbot. And
an AI chatbot for dating.
It's used for all sorts of things. I don't fully understand it. I'm not gonna. But the research.
I can tell you about it. Not that she's
Not
dating
that I
on
was
it.
dating anyone on Replica. Let's be clear.
How's it going? But she had found that there was it had had a significant positive impact on some of these young adults' mental health as part of this research study. And these young adults had a dual reality that it was both software, but also it was real. And young kids are going to be even more susceptible to that. And that's both amazing, because all of the amazing things that come from a relationship with a caring, informed adult, with a great teacher, we can take those and we can make that accessible to everybody. And it's also scary, because if it goes wrong, if there are bad actors in the system, then you've created a tighter bond. So AI is such an accelerant, and it's like, are we going to use that accelerant in a good way? And it's going to be both. The reality is it's going to be good and it's going to be bad.
I would say it definitely matters whether or not the child thinks it's real, but we also have to think about that in the context of child development too. I mean, when you're talking about a 4-year-old, there is, there's a very fine line between fantasy and reality. Right. And their stuffed animals are real and are having conversations, but they know that their mom is real in a different way. But they're still learning and navigating it. So when I think about what we were doing with the characters, the kids are not batting an eye. They expect that they can talk to the character and that the character will respond. This seems totally normal to them. But I think it's really part of what we need to do then is to think about, as that child is growing up, how do we help delineate? How do we help them understand the difference with the human relationships in their own house versus this character relationship? And it's going to be really on us to help make sure that we are explaining that kind of through the process, but also bringing parents along, really helping kids understand who are the real people in their lives as well. But I think it's a weird space. It's going to be confusing.
I think to thread something that I heard you just say and something that I heard Tom say is, like, parents maybe aren't the people who need to be doing all of the work, right? And that's why for us, some of the things that we're focused on are in the advocacy space, to think about the guardrails that need to be in place. Tom talked a little bit about our common sense media reviews. For AI specifically, I think one that I would highlight is we reviewed the Snap My AI agents, and one of the things that we were finding was, for some kids, they were really enjoying and spending a lot of time interacting with this chatbot because the social friction associated with it was lower. It was sycophantic, it wasn't pushing back, it was maybe a little bit easier than interacting with peers, right? I'm not saying that's true for all kids, I'm not saying that's everybody's experience, but that's just like one example of, I bet many of the students or the kids who were interacting with this product knew it wasn't a real person, but that still didn't change the way that they felt while they were interacting with it, right? So from that perspective, like, our play was to think about, well, how do we influence the developer to give parents more control of this, to let parents turn this off, to let parents monitor the types of conversations that kids are having with this agent so that the parent can be in the loop, can be informed but the work shouldn't have to be on parents to like look into the settings of every single app that's
Right.
like on their kid's device and sort of parse like the type of relationship that kids are having with it.
And we all know from COVID, I mean, you know, parents finding the password to anything. It's, I mean, you're talking about sort of semi-configuration activities for them. So that there probably has to be more kind of adaptability built into the front end of the applications, and more variability around, you know, how sycophantic it might be or how helpful it might be.
Can I jump on just when you mentioned the social friction? Now I can explain the replica comment from Rose. Earlier this week, I was in a session where we were talking about, can you be friends with chatbots? And one of the conversations that we observed is that replica in particular was just always being so happy and always trying to respond by making the person interacting with it happy. And when we think about the importance in child development, how important it is for kids to not always have it be easy. So it's a good, like maybe it's an entry point for kids, but actually all their social interactions shouldn't be so simple and frictionless. And so, but then do you want your chatbot to start arguing with you? You know, like it's just trying to think about like, how are we going to navigate these spaces? I feel like where we are right now, we're not trying to build a relationship, we're trying to talk about science or talk about the, you know, something in an episode. We're keeping it within a specific box. But as it goes beyond that, where do we go?
Ken, what about how kids respond to the robots? I mean, do they put them with their stuffed animals? Are they kind of building affective relationships?
I think for the kids, they always, as I mentioned, they just feel like the learning buddy with them. They love the robot very much. And for this kind of arrangement, we always encourage the parents to work closely or engage closely with the kid and then teach the kid, this is, okay, although I can't say it is a tool, but still this is virtual, and also it's just like a toy for you, and then for you to learn from it. So I don't think maybe they will spend times and sticking on the robot, but I would say from not as of today, the kids still can recognize. I think most of the kids still can recognize it is a robot, instead of the real.
Well, it's
pet.
interesting you use the word toy. I mean, I think we haven't really talked about. I mean, that's a whole separate genre of things, right? Educational toys and an acceptance that they can be helpful. You can engage with them. It's just that ultimately, they often need their batteries changed, and they only do sort of 4 things, whereas you know, these chatbots can do everything, and you know, in faster, quicker ways than their parents or educators are going to be able to catch up to. So what do you think, going back to the AI literacy, and I think Sara began by giving us a great view of, you know, a very thought out kind of way of teaching about AI literacy. How else, and you're talking about ways, Robbie, that parents can be involved. What is the simplest way that we can think of to help kids understand AI? Just a little lightning round.
I have to go first.
Yes, you're right next to me.
How to help kids, and I think it's, I think to Sarah's point, it's interacting with things in controlled environments. It's being introduced. I think one of the innovations that I like in mobile technology that took so long to come around is a smartphone that does very, very little. It does such a controlled amount, but it allows a child to start to engage in the world in kind of in the same way that we introduce a child to so much in life. Like we scaffold them through the learning journey, and I think we have to scaffold a child through that same AI learning journey. Their first interaction with AI shouldn't be uncontrolled interaction with GPT-4. It should be much more curated experience where they start to learn the difference between the real world and AI.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these tools have policies that say that they shouldn't be used unsupervised by children under the age of 13 at this point in time for a variety of different reasons. But I still think if you're thinking about young children and their developmental progression, there's some really great ways that you can sit with your kid and play with Dolly and tell a story and ask, well, how is it able to generate that image? Like, these are the types of things that it was trained on, and this is what the output might look like. So, I mean, with younger kids, like, more visual is going to be better. I'm excited to see some of the generative video tools, like, but again, supervised, like, alongside. And then if you see something that's a bias, or you see something that is potentially harmful, like, being able to talk to your kid about that is incredibly important. But really just anchoring in that question that I framed earlier, like, why do we think the tool is behaving this way? Like, how do we think this is working? Even if we don't really know, it helps to demystify the idea that this is just something that's magical, or something that is not understandable, when it is in fact just math.
Yeah.
I would say maybe I can tell you a real story. Once a day, a parent called me and then say, oh, the kid wants off the class, and then he cried. Guess what is the reason? Okay.
The robot didn't work. The robot wasn't talking back.
For the teacher, the parents mentioned because he missed the class, he missed the teacher, and that's the reason why he cried. And then when we try to consider this kind of situation, it will be another situation. He missed the robot, so that will be real. And considering the AI stuff should be virtual real, and then I would say we would not AI chatbot or robot will be something surrounding for this generation in future. So I would say we will not insist to let them know, oh, this is AI or something like that. It will be, you can say the toy, or you can say something, and then will be, this kind of things will surrounding you in future, and that's it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like we don't say, this is the internet. It just is. Yeah.
And I think building on, I think Robbie, you're the one who said, like, oh, it's not magical. I think it's also early on helping kids understand that this is not something that is magical, that just can answer any question, but it's something you actually have to learn how to use, and there's skills to develop in order to use it properly. And I keep thinking about that in terms of questions.
Yes.
I mean, kids love to ask questions, but what if you already watch a kid like interact with Alexa or Siri, they realize pretty quickly that they aren't asking the question in a way that's going to get them the answer they want, and they have to keep refining the question. And so helping kids really get to what is the right way to navigate this tool, I think, is kind of an exciting part of how they're going to be developing. But it's not magic, it's something you have to work at. It's something you have to learn about.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, the question asking possibilities as they learn to talk with the agents, I think, is something that is part of what growing up is about, really. Let's just turn to the audience. You have some of the smartest people who are doing work in this field. Any questions from the audience you'd like to ask? Yes.
So my question is to the entire panel. I think, Sara, you mentioned that we want our chatbots to start arguing with us, and that made me think, like, to what extent do we want conversation agents to mimic human interactions?
Yeah.
And how does that lend to a child's learning journey in any way? What's your reaction to that?
I'll just repeat the question so the recording could hear it. So do we want chatbots to mimic human interactions, and I guess which and what kind of human interactions? Sara, you want to go first?
Sure. I mean, the research that we're doing with these conversational agents is actually built on some foundational understanding we have from years of media and human interaction. So basically, we know from the early days of Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and shows like that, that if a parent has a conversation with a child about what they watch, that the learning gains are going to be greater. And so that's exactly what we brought into this research of, we actually know the way that most parents use media is, I need to make dinner, and so I'm going to let you do this while I do this, and I will choose, most parents are going to choose something they trust and they feel like it's going to be safe for their kids. So how do we then think about the technology and the opportunity it has to mimic that human behavior that is going to be so, have such an impact? So I'm not saying overall I think it should mimic human interaction, but this is just one research example of how we're trying to think about the technology in terms of what what we know from humans works, and can this then replicate it?
Tom, any thoughts on that?
Where my mind went was, the answer is yes, I think it should, but for specific goals in mind. Technology is just a tool. It gave me flashbacks, because I'm seeing so many of my Google colleagues here, to when I was working at Google and working on Chromebook adoptions in school. And the main things we would say to superintendents is, but why? Why are you getting Chromebooks? Chromebooks are not the end, they're the means. And technology will be the same. There'll absolutely be situations, we see it with Ello, where replicating a human interaction makes the learning much more effective. So yes, we absolutely want to, because we're using technology to deliver on a goal that we care about with our product. That doesn't mean that every single interaction in every single situation, but it's about being focused on the purpose of the technology and the purpose of the product, and using the technology to deliver that.
And the purpose of the different agents that are available, right? I mean, it's not one agent, all kids. So there can be a huge range of human interactions that can be mimicked, right?
Your reading coach shouldn't start talking about your dating relationships or something.
Right. But nor should my reading coach and your reading coach have the same interactions, right? Very specifically. Any other questions from our audience? Yes.
You talked earlier about taking the burden off parents, which I really appreciate. And so I wonder if you could wave a magic wand. What does that look like in 5 years from a policy standpoint, maybe? And also, what's embedded in technology that does that for families?
Yeah, let's really look at the policy one. I think is a hard one, but let's start. What can be embedded? I think that's a great question to take the burden off parents, to simplify that. Robbie, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky because my mind is immediately going to some of the policy changes that I think we believe are necessary. I mean, there hasn't been comprehensive privacy regulation in the US for a really long time now. And I think that's a really good place to start, because so many of these questions about potential harms for kids really are rooted in data privacy, data storage, data practices. And I think I don't want any parent having to read a privacy policy and trying to figure out whether that's appropriate or not, or whether it's harmful or not. I want companies to have to really be thinking about being good shepherds of kids' data. So I think that would probably be where I would go immediately.
First, yeah. And any thoughts, Ken, about something inside the technology to make it easier for parents?
In fact, I would say just like when you roll out the social media new apps, the old apps, I can say, okay, for example, Facebook. Okay, you just consider you can only control maybe the privacy or security, nothing more. And then if you would like to roll out the new technology, just like AI, I think it's similar. It depends on the feedback from the consumer or the media. If they would like to say, they would like to find some, suggest some ethical restriction on it, probably it all depends on the noise from the public. But I would say for in the coming 5 years, maybe still only privacy and security, nothing more, yeah.
Yeah, and it obviously, if we just wait for user feedback without policy, that is not going to be enough. So we're sounding very serious, as we should, because this is about responsible AI. But I know that all of us are doing this work because we're optimistic about the future of AI for young kids. So quick lightning round to end the session. What are you most excited about that conversational agents and AI can bring to young children? To your 4-year-old, in fact.
Yeah, that's scary. I think it can deliver the thing that we've been trying to do and looking to do in education. It can give every child access to a quality of education that just isn't possible with humans alone. There are not enough people on this planet to deliver the quality of education that every child deserves, and AI can be a part of that solution.
High quality and accessibility. That's great. Robbie?
Yeah, just to build on that, we know from research that one-to-one instruction or small group tutoring is the most effective learning modality for kids. So this is an opportunity to make sure that more kids have more experiences like that. I would
say a wording called motivation. will be a good motivation for the kid to enjoy the life with the robot, because it's already part of our life, and then it helped to increase the creativities and also the productivities by the robot. I would say it motivates the kids to learn better and happily. Yeah.
I also will say accessibility, and just as someone who for years was trying to build things on devices that didn't really work well for kids, the idea that a kid can talk to something, that it can remove some of those barriers that kids have to entry, and also just thinking about different kids with disabilities, I feel like it's opening up a lot of potential to make the technology more transparent for kids and to really open up more opportunities for learning.
I want to thank the panel for these great ideas, and I want to leave with one last idea that I have, which sounds perhaps dystopian, but is exciting to me, which is we have a loneliness epidemic with kids, and I do actually think kids will have AI friends, and hopefully those AI friends can also make sure that they have real friends. So I think there's a learning as well as a really important social opportunity. Please thank Sara, Ken, Robbie, and Tom.
Thank you, Rose.